Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mesdames et messieurs, bonsoir. My name is Denis Chagnon, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies this evening. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame, let me express our sincere appreciation for your presence at this 46th Annual Induction Dinner and Ceremonies. We are here tonight to pay tribute to 5 outstanding Canadians who have devoted their lives to building an aviation industry that in many ways is the envy of the world. Leur vision partagée était et demeure d'unir ce vaste pays par la voie des airs et de l'ouvrir sur un monde en pleine transformation. Imagination, courage et persévérance sont les traits de caractère qui les ont menés vers les plus hautes sphères de cette formidable aventure qu'est la nôtre. We begin our celebrations with the colorful entrance of our inductees, led by Pike Major Brian McKenzie, Black Watch Association Pipes and Drums, and escorted by Royal Canadian Air Cadet Squadron 588, Eric Sims, et les cadets de l'Association royale canadienne Escadron 621 Saint-Laurent. At this time, I would invite you all to rise for the arrival of our inductees and to remain standing for the national anthem that follows immediately. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we let our piper go, I wish to call upon his good offices for the traditional salute to the piper. Taking part in the salute are Rod Sheridan, Chairman of the Hall of Fame, and Gordon Bertarelli, the Director of the Hall. Gentlemen, please. Ooh. Thank you, Pike Major McKenzie, and thank you, Rod, And thank you, Gordon. That was exciting. You have alcohol on the back.
Oh, really? Like a year ago.
It is now my pleasure to invite to the lectern Monsieur Michel Ouellette, Senior Vice President of Program Management and Engineering at Bombardier Business Aircraft. Monsieur Ouellette.
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir à tous. It's an honor to be here tonight at Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame Induction Gala. The Induction Gala is a tradition since 1973. It commemorates and honors Canadians whose aviation accomplishments have contributed to the industry and to our country's development. C'est un vrai privilège d'être ici ce soir avec vous au gala d'intronisation du Panthéon de l'aviation du Canada, une tradition qui reconnaît depuis 1973 les Canadiens dont les réalisations en aviation ont contribué à l'industrie et au développement de notre pays. I welcome you all to the Laurent Baudouin Completion Center. We are in a world-class facility where we have completed and delivered close to 850 global business jets, an aircraft that has been part of our glorious Canadian history for over 20 years and will continue to be with the addition of the Global 55, 65, and 7500. Yes. That's good. Bienvenue au Centre de finition Laurent Baudouin, un centre de classe mondiale avec des employés de classe mondiale où nous avons complété plus de 850 avions d'affaires globales, un fleuron de notre histoire aéronautique canadienne depuis plus de 20 ans et qui continuera de l'être avec l'introduction du Global 5500, 6500 et 7500. But tonight, it's not about aircraft. It's about aviators, engineers, technicians, leaders who have distinguished themselves, such as Laurent Baudouin, with whom we have the privilege of being with this evening. Mais nous ne sommes pas ici ce soir pour parler d'avions. Nous sommes là pour souligner les aviateurs, les ingénieurs, les techniciens, les leaders qui se sont distingués, comme Laurent Baudouin, avec qui nous avons le privilège d'être ce soir. I'm especially thrilled to welcome the 5 inductees we will honor today. And that was a great entrance for the 5 inductees. This is your evening. This is our evening. Thank you for letting us celebrate this moment with you as one big aviation team. How fitting to induct John Holding in the Hall of Fame tonight. Former Executive Vice President in Engineering and Product Development at Bombardier, John has been the force behind many product developments, the Challenger, the CRJ, and the Globals we have here tonight. Even in his retirement, he continues to be a trusted advisor. John, my personal thanks. It's great to see you here with your family tonight. On this note, I wish you all a wonderful evening. Je vous souhaite une merveilleuse soirée. Merci.
I would next invite to the lectern Mr. Sergio Maroni. I love speaking Italian. Vice President of Customer Deliveries at Bombardier Business Aircraft to deliver the Airman's Grace.
Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. Thank you, Dennis, for that great introduction. I'd like to thank the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame for giving me the honor of reciting the Airman's Grace. As a pilot and a lover of aviation, it is truly a privilege. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Airman's Grace. Lord of thunderhead and sky, you who placed the man the will to fly, you taught his hand speed, skill, and grace to soar beyond man's dwelling place. Il partage avec nous la perspective de l'aigle et le droit de se lancer comme celui-ci, le droit de nommer les nuages foyers et d'errer gracieusement dans les cieux. May we, assembled here tonight, and all who love the thrill of flight, recall with twofold gratitude your gift of wings, your gift of food. I wish you all a wonderful evening. Merci beaucoup et bonsoir.
And now to officially welcome you to this year's gala event, I invite back to the lectern the chairman of the Hall of Fame, Mr. Rod Sheridan. Rod?
On behalf of the staff, the board of directors of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame, welcome to the 46th induction ceremony and gala dinner. It's really great that you could make it. Usually Bombardier, and Michel has told me, is usually you don't get in here unless you buy a Global. So, and he's telling us there will be taking orders at the end. So it was about a year ago at Farnborough Air Show when a fellow who unfortunately couldn't be here, Fred Cromer from Commercial Aircraft, and I were having a discussion, and I said we hadn't been in Eastern Canada in quite a while, or we hadn't been in Montreal in a long time, and was there a way that we could organize something and use one of the Bombardier facilities? After a few discussions, and I swear there was no wine, it was just coffee, and he said, well, maybe we could do this. And so after a little bit of time, we confirmed that we could use the facility, and then so many people from Bombardier helped out to make this the night that you're enjoying. It was absolutely incredible. So there are a couple people. You've met Sergio earlier. Without him, Katie and Pascal, Brian, who helped us out with the paperwork, or the attorney a little while ago. And lastly, Leo Knappen, who has been a friend of the Hall of Fame for many, many years. That's just a few of the people. I can't name everybody because I can't say enough at how Bombardier helped us pull all this together, and I hope you enjoyed the event. Before we get to the main program, there's a few more words of thanks that I need to offer. Without all 400 of you here tonight, our sponsors, Airbus, Vancouver Airport, CAE, Kelowna Flightcraft, Sky Service, and Pratt & Whitney, and all the advertisers in the program, these induction dinners wouldn't happen. So for everyone here, all of you, to make sure, if you make sure we have your email or business card, it says you will be made an honorary friend of the Hall for the next 12 months. Now, in reality, we hope that you stay on after that, because that might cost a little bit of money, but it's the Friends of the Hall, the annual dinner, donations that we use to run the operation, and we keep these events going. And let's face it, we want to keep these events going for a long time. So against their wishes, there are a couple people who've been very, very instrumental in the Hall for many years, who this is the last dinner that they'll be participating in, or sorry, I'm sure they'll be here, but they won't be contributing to on a front line. That's Mary Oswald and John Chalmers. Mary writes edits and manages the flyer, which is our publication that comes out quarterly. And John, you're going to get to see some of his work tonight because he's the one that wrote all of the words that you're going to hear in the presentations. So when you see them later, please thank them, because without them, we couldn't have had this evening. There is another group that I want to introduce you to, and it's the people, the inductees tonight are here as a result of the time and efforts of the people that nominated them. And I'd like to briefly recognize those people, if you don't mind. And for Dave Fairbanks, Tom Appleton, and Larry Milbury put together their nomination. For John Holding, Frank Bystrocki, John Lawson, and Dan Burns. For Barry Lapointe, Tracy Medvey, and Paula Quinn. For Greg McDougall, Sandra Stoddard Hansen, and Dave Curtis. and for Bill Paris Jr. Now, I'm asking everybody to think about who they know that should be recognized. Our job here is to contribute to the history of aviation and recognize it. Please, look at our website. There's an excellent checklist of how to follow and create a submission and present somebody that we can look at for induction into the Hall of Fame. If you've nominated somebody already, make sure you update the file with any new information and keep your file active. Please contact us if you have any questions. Speak to any of our people in Wetaskiwin or the board members that you'll find here this evening, or email myself. We'd be happy to look after it for you. We'd be happy to help you out. In 1999, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Mr. Laurent Baudouin was inducted into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. The day that I received the confirmation that we could use this facility for this dinner tonight, I called Mr. Baudouin's office in the hope of truly making this a special evening. I mean, let's face it, what could be better than Laurent Baudouin presenting the honors to the newest inductees in the Laurent Baudouin Completion Center? For me, it is a great honor to ask you to join me in thanking Laurent and Claire Baudouin for spending their evening with us and welcoming the newest members into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame.
We are delighted to pay tribute to two of our members who have reached the remarkable milestone of 100 years. Russ Bannock, who will be 100 on November 1st, and Dick Richmond, who celebrated his 100th birthday in January. While Dick could not be with us today, we're very happy that his close friend, Larry Milbury, agreed to stand in for him. Larry is also a member of the Hall, inducted in 2004. The portraits you see on the screen of Russ on the left and Dick were drawn by Irma Kusil, our resident artist for many years. Mrs. Kusil was first commissioned by the Hall to draw portraits of inductees at our very first induction ceremonies in 1974. Irma went on to produce portraits of our inductees for the next 39 years, right up to 2013. In a few minutes, Russ and Dick will receive a framed copy of their portraits that were drawn for Russ at his induction in 1983 and for Dick at his induction in 1995. For the moment, let's take a peek at these two extraordinary lives, beginning with Russ Bannock. Russ began his journey in aviation as a young RCAF pilot, joining when he was only 20 years of age. He spent time in Canada as instructor and was sent overseas in 1944. He joined 418 Squadron and was soon flying Mosquito fighter bombers on intruder missions all over Europe. He excelled and was appointed wing commander and commander of his squadron. Russ is shown here second from left with his ground crew in front of his de Havilland Mosquito, which carried two crew members, a pilot and a navigator. The Mosquito aircraft was built mostly of wood, partly to save on metals which were in short supply during the war. It was well designed and was the fastest aircraft in the sky at the time. Russ was a very skilled pilot and was twice awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. He became the RCAF's leading night fighter of World War II and received the Distinguished Service Order for his outstanding leadership in his role as commanding officer. When Russ returned to Canada, he joined de Havilland as chief test pilot and operations manager. This photo shows Russ in 1948 after completing a test flight of the first de Havilland Vampire jet aircraft assembled in Canada at Downsview. Russ is shown on the left in this photo, following a tour to Alaska in July 1949 with the de Havilland aircraft the now legendary Beaver. He became well known for his ability to demonstrate the capabilities of the company's short takeoff and landing aircraft, including the Beaver and the Chipmunk. He was promoted to Vice President of Sales and had a great success in sales promotions in the 1950s and 60s of de Havilland products such as the Beaver, the Otter, the Twin Otter, Caribou, and Buffalo. In 1975, Russ was promoted to President and CEO of the company. Here is Russ Bannock today. He's vibrant, busy, and doesn't act like a centenarian. I should say It'll take me 100 years to learn that one, I think. Come to think of it, he doesn't look like one either. Congratulations, Russ. Now, let's look at the life of Dick Richmond. Dick was a multi-talented aeronautical engineer whose remarkable career over 50 years spanned the development of aircraft, from the design of bush planes to high-technology products. He was sought after by many companies and held senior positions on engineering teams in airframe, engine, missile, and space project development and manufacturing. In 1947, Dick was hired by Canadair and appointed Chief Development Engineer of the Canadair version of the F-86 Sabre. In 1956, he led the design of a small jet trainer that evolved into the Canadair CL-41, the Tudor jet. It became the RCAF's leading jet trainer and is still used by the RCAF Snowbirds. In 1960, Dick joined Pratt & Whitney as Vice President of Operations. He's seen here on the far right in 1963, when he directed the production of the first PT-6 turboprop aircraft engine. In 1974, Dick became President and CEO of Spar Aerospace. He directed the first 5 years of the development of the Canadarm, a remote manipulator arm still in use today on the International Space Station to deploy space station payloads. Dick returned to Canadair in 1981 as Chief Operating Officer with the task of resolving problems with the Challenger 600 series aircraft. He is seen here, second from left, celebrating the first test flight of the CL-601 in 1982. In 1984, he oversaw the design and marketing of the CL-601 that became the Canadair regional jet. It has been in production since then, with upgrades and well over 1,000 units built. In 1954, Dick was the co-founder of the Canadian Aeronautics Institute. He is shown on the right in 1956 with Hall of Fame member J.A.D. McCurdy, who in 1909 was the first man to fly in Canada. Dick wrote a book about his 50-year career in Canadian aerospace with stories about his work on various programs, such as the Fairchild Husky bush plane, the PT-6 turboprop engine, and the Canadair regional jet. We're pleased to recognize Dick, who celebrated his 100th birthday in Toronto on January 13 of this year. Congratulations, Dick Richmond. I'd now ask our chairman to present the framed copies to Russ and Dick Larry. As you well imagine, an event like this would not be possible, as Rod mentioned a bit earlier, without the support of our sponsors. These are listed in your program. Yet I would like to single out our platinum sponsors, Airbus Canada and a longtime partner of the Hall, Vancouver International Airport. And I'm delighted to invite on stage Mr. Rob Dewar, Head of Customer Support and Head of Engineering at Airbus Canada. Mr. Dewar.
So I'm Rob Dewar. I'm Head of Engineering and Customer Services for the A220. I'm really honored to be here representing the A220 team to recognize this very special event nominating John Holding into the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame. So maybe a few funny stories about John. I first met John in 1986. At the time it was Canadair when I joined the program. I remember sitting there as a new employee watching this small British man holding up and down the aisle many times per day. So eventually I got the courage to ask, who is this gentleman and what does he do? So eventually they said, well, it's John Holding and he's in charge of the cat team. So I said, that makes a lot of sense. He's chasing cats all day. And in fact, that was really an anecdote of how John was a ball of energy and, of course, always passionate about aerospace. Of course, later I learned that the CAT stood for the Corrective Action Team on the Challenger. So eventually I figured it all out. So I want to say a few things about John. I've worked with John over most of my career, over many of the programs. The CRJ programs, the Global and Challengers. But for me, of course, most notably it was the C-Series, now the A220. And I have to say that John, his passion, his knowledge and leadership has had a tremendous impact on aviation and our teams and on myself personally. And John, I want to personally thank you for supporting the launch of the C-Series at the time and also allowing me to lead this very challenging project. I'll always be grateful for that. And I have to say that, I'm very proud to say we now have 70 aircraft in service, and the aircraft has had exceptional entry into service and really glowing reviews from our customers and, of course, from the passengers. So please give John a very great hand for everything. We're truly grateful, John. Very well appreciated and very well deserved this recognition. Thank you. Here's a small video. We have a small video I'd like to show.
Our vision at the Hall is to keep aviation heroes, leaders, and innovators alive in the hearts and minds of Canadians. Our mission is twofold: to honor those individuals and organizations that have made outstanding contributions to aviation and aerospace in Canada, and to collect, preserve, exhibit, and interpret artifacts and documents thereby inspiring and educating Canadians from coast to coast. We do so through this annual gala, our magazine, The Flyer, our website, and our museum in partnership with the Reynolds Alberta Museum. Over the next few minutes, let us take you on a virtual visit of our museum located just outside of Wetaskiwin. The script for this video was prepared by Mary Oswald and Denny May, both longtime volunteers of the Hall of Fame. Also featured are many photos taken by Rick Riddell, the official photographer of the Hall for many years now. You see him walking around. He's the one with the fantastic smile, and he'll want you to reciprocate for the photos. So may we have the video, please?
Welcome to a tour of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. The hall is located in the facilities of the Reynolds Alberta Museum in Wetaskiwin, Alberta, south of Edmonton. The Reynolds Alberta Museum is an impressive building showing the collection of cars, aircraft, and machines collected over many years by its benefactor, Stan Reynolds. The Reynolds Alberta Museum has an impressive display that tells the story of Stan Reynolds' life as a collector. The large hangar ahead contains the stories of the members of the Hall of Fame. As we enter the hangar, we're amazed at the aircraft displayed here. This is the Hall of Fame. Around this hangar, we find a display panel for each member. The Hall has over 200 members. They represent the best of all in pilots, air mechanics, astronauts, entrepreneurs, historians, artists, and more. These include such members as Jim McBride, Russ Bannock, Bud White, Max Ward, Chris Hadfield, Mark Garneau, Rosella Bjornson, Punch Dickens, Tom Lamb, and Wap May. The Hall had its beginnings in 1973 when Punch Dickens, Ray Monroe, and a few other aviators got together to discuss the need to honor the many who had contributed so much to the development of aviation in Canada. The first induction dinner was held in Edmonton in July 1974 with 79 inductees. There were over 600 people in attendance. It was certainly a black tie affair. The Hall also recognizes the contributions made by aviation-related organizations such as the RCAF, Golden Hawks Air Demonstration Team, COPA, the Canadian Owners and Pilots Association, the Air Cadet League of Canada, Search and Rescue Canada. The artifacts we see around the hangar have been donated by members of the Hall. The Hall appreciates having these on display for the public to see. Thanks to the generosity of the Alberta government and the Reynolds Alberta Museum, the Hall of Fame has a home. When the museum opened in 1992, the Hall of Fame was invited to move its operations from Edmonton to Wetaskiwin, where it has been ever since. In order to keep the stories alive in the hearts and minds of all Canadians, the Hall published a beautiful coffee table book about the members in 1999 and prints annual updates to keep current with new inductees each year. It publishes a newsletter, The Flyer, several times a year and maintains its own website. Each year it holds an induction dinner when new members are inducted. These induction galas are held in different parts of Canada from east to west. Another important aspect of the Hall's activities is that it keeps in touch with its members and their families. This special display tells about the Canadians who won the Victoria Cross for their heroism in battle in both World War I and World War II. We are now moving to the large collection storage facility. In this warehouse is an amazing collection of aircraft and vehicles not often seen by the public. Many of these items are waiting to be moved to the restoration area in the main building. This building houses the Hall's archives and all of its records. Each member has a designated storage box which keeps his or her artifacts, photos, newspaper clippings in a safe place. The Hall is in the process of digitizing its artifacts and photos. This work is the focus of the summer students who come to work for several weeks each year. The Hall depends on members and families to save their memorabilia to donate to the Hall at a later date. These items keep the memories alive. The Hall depends on the public to nominate new members each year. You can go onto the website to find the forms and instructions. Don't wait if you know someone who deserves to be honored by induction into the Hall of Fame. Do it now.
As I mentioned before, the city of Wetaskiwin traditionally proclaims each inductee to be an honorary citizen of the city, for which we are extremely grateful. Mr. Tyler Grandam, Mayor of Wetaskiwin, is with us this evening, and I'd like him to rise and be recognized. And thank you so much for your generosity. I hope we can find him. Let's applaud anyway. We now come to the point in our program where we present our inductees in words and images. We begin with David Fairbanks. Né en 1922 à Ithaca, dans l'État de New York, David s'enrôle dans l'aviation royale canadienne en 1941. Au Royaume-Uni, il s'impose rapidement comme leader exceptionnel et reçoit la Croix de vol distinguée à 3 reprises. Bien que de retour aux États-Unis au lendemain de la guerre, il revient ensuite au Canada à l'emploi de la Dominion Bridge et de la Sperry. En 1955, il passe à la Société de Havilland Canada et y connaît une carrière exceptionnelle. David Fairbanks aura laissé une trace indélébile sur l'industrie de l'aviation au Canada. May we have the video, please?
An American in the Royal Canadian Air Force, attached to the Royal Air Force as a fighter pilot, David Fairbanks received the Distinguished Flying Cross 3 times. Post-war, he served de Havilland Canada in promotion and development of the company's Dash 7 airliner and other short takeoff and landing aircraft. Born in the United States at Ithaca, New York on August 22, 1922, to his parents Helen and Frank, David had one brother, Thaddeus, and a sister, Caroline. After graduating from Ithaca High School in 1940, at age 18, David joined the Royal Canadian Air Force. He thus became an American in a Canadian Air Force uniform when he enlisted with the RCAF at Hamilton, Ontario in February 1941. In Toronto, at No. 1 Manning Depot, at the Canadian National Exhibition Fairground Equine Building, David was selected for flying training, and on July 1, 1941, at Victoriaville, Quebec, in Sacred Heart College, he was posted to No. 3 Initial Training School of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. At No. 21 Elementary Flying Training School at Chatham, New Brunswick, he learned to fly in Fleet Finch biplanes. David received his pilot's wings on November 21, 1941, at No. 9 Service Flying Training School at Summerside, Prince Edward Island. With his skill as a pilot, he qualified as a flying instructor at Central Flying School at Trenton, Ontario, and then instructed young airmen at Saint-Hubert, Quebec, until April 1943. Next, he was shipped to England, attached to the Royal Air Force, and promoted from flying officer to flight lieutenant with 501 Squadron, RAF, to fly Spitfires. On June 9, 1944, he destroyed a German Messerschmitt Bf-109 fighter aircraft and damaged another. All his other victories were scored while flying a Hawker Tempest during the rest of his combat experience.
The Tempest 5 is one of Britain's latest blows at Nazism. She embodies all the best features of the Typhoon, and her redesigned wing and later Sabre engine give her outstanding performance at all altitudes.
While flying a Tempest with 274 Squadron, in August 1944, Fairbanks destroyed the first of 2 buzz bombs, which were developed for attacks on London. In November 1944, David's aircraft was severely damaged and burned, but he landed the aircraft safely at his base and was awarded his first Distinguished Flying Cross. 2 more 109s were shot down by David Fairbanks during the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944. In January 1945, Fairbanks shot down 5 more aircraft, including a Focke-Wulf FW-190 fighter. In 1945, David Fairbanks was promoted to squadron leader and returned to 274 Squadron, for which he assumed command on February 9. And 2 days later, he shot down a twin-engined Arado 234, the world's first jet bomber. In February 1945, David was shot up in his Tempest, bailed out, and taken as a prisoner of war until he was liberated by Allied troops. Repatriated to Canada in 1945, on July 7, David Fairbanks was awarded the DFC for the 3rd time. By war's end, he had destroyed 15 enemy aircraft. He was 22 years old. Back home at Ithaca, New York, he earned a degree in mechanical engineering in 1950 from Cornell University. He returned to Canada in Montreal, where he worked on the city's Champlain Bridge project for 1 year as an engineer. While in Montreal, he joined RCAF Auxiliary Squadron 401, flying Harvards and Canadair Silver Star and de Havilland Vampire jets. With Sperry Gyroscope Company of Canada, he was transferred to the United Kingdom, flying Gloucester Meteors and F-86 jet aircraft for an RCAF auxiliary squadron. David returned to Canada in 1955, joining de Havilland Aircraft of Canada as a test pilot and flew the first flight of de Havilland's DHC-4 Caribou, and was a demonstration pilot and promoter of de Havilland's short takeoff and landing aircraft, including the Beaver, the Twin Otter, the Buffalo, and the Caribou at countries around the world. He was involved in certification of de Havilland's DHC-7, known as the Dash 7, produced from 1975 until 1988, when de Havilland Canada was purchased by Boeing and later sold to Bombardier. Shortly after the rollout of the Dash 7, David died of a heart attack at age 52. 3 times the recipient of the Distinguished Flying Cross, in 1976 he was named to Canada's most prestigious aviation award, the Trans-Canada McKee Trophy, largely in recognition of his contribution to the development of Canada's short takeoff and landing aircraft technology. David Charles Fairbanks, a war hero and a captain of industry, was survived by his second wife, Betty. He was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame on May 16, 2019.
Our second inductee this evening is John Holding. We feel we know you, John, by now. John est né au Royaume-Uni en 1943. Après 17 ans au service de l'industrie britannique, il est recruté par la société Canadair et affecté au développement du Challenger. Au fil des ans, il exerça une grande influence sur le secteur de l'innovation et de la production, en ingénierie et sur tous les projets de Canadair Bombardier. John occupe une place immense au sein de l'industrie. Il s'est vu décerner plusieurs prix et, à la retraite, contribue toujours à la promotion de l'innovation en aérospatiale au Canada et à l'étranger. Let's take now a close look at John's fascinating career.
Born and educated in England, after experience in the British aircraft industry, in 1979, John Holding moved to Canada and worked with Canadair in aircraft design. Following purchase of the company by Bombardier and holding senior management positions, John played a pivotal role in the company's production of Canadian-built aircraft. Born in Preston on August 13, 1943, John Peter Holding was one of 3 children born to his parents, Jack and Mabel. John received his early education at Talbot's Boys' School in his hometown of Preston, and was a top student in secondary school who would eventually be awarded a national prize in 1965 and his diploma in mechanical engineering. John's father, Jack, served as a rear gunner for 3 tours of duty in Mitchell bombers with 180 Squadron of the Royal Air Force during the Second World War. At age 19, John began a 5-year apprenticeship in British aerospace with aircraft builder English Electric, subsequently becoming British Aerospace. There he was exposed to hands-on experience in all aspects of aircraft production, from design to the shop floor to completion of the final product. On July 10, 1965, John married his wife, Cherie, and continuing his education, he earned a Master of Science degree from the University of Manchester in 1967 and became a professional engineer. In the aviation industry, he became involved with flight control systems for fighter aircraft programs, leading to an appointment as Deputy Program Manager on the Jaguar fly-by-wire demonstrator aircraft. Meanwhile, in Canada, with the CL-600 Challenger aircraft program of Canadair, talent was sought from the United Kingdom and the United States. Responding to an opportunity to work on a new aircraft, in 1979, John and Cherie moved with their 3 children to join Canadair in Montreal. John began his time at Canadair as a senior staff specialist, advancing to Director of Systems Engineering for the Challenger. During this period, John's technical expertise earned him the trust of customers and the Canadair team alike. In 1993, he became Executive Vice President of Bombardier Aerospace Group, which had purchased Canadair in 1986. John's expertise led to his appointment as Vice President Engineering in 1990. Product development, flight operations, and quality assurance were added to John's responsibilities. In 1996, he was promoted to Executive Vice President of Engineering and Product Development. For the last 2 years of his Bombardier employment, John served as Executive Vice President of Integrated Product Development and Planning for Bombardier's new commercial aircraft programs. He oversaw conversion of the Bombardier-built CL-215 amphibious water bomber to turbine power, and the introduction of its sister, a new amphibian water bomber, the CL-415. Added to this was the development of the Bombardier-built Q400, which rejuvenated the regional airline turboprop market. John participated in the design of the Challenger 600 series and had full responsibility for the certification of the Challenger 604 and the smaller Challenger 300, as well as for the Learjet executive jet aircraft, for Bombardier's Canadian Regional Jet Series, and for the company's Global Express series being built by Bombardier. John has contributed significantly to the product lines that propelled Bombardier to the position of number 3 aircraft manufacturer in the world. Following retirement from Bombardier in 2005, John incorporated JPAH Aerospace Engineering Limited, keeping abreast of technological developments in aviation. and as Senior Advisor at Aerion Corporation, he has assisted in the advanced design phase of Aerion's supersonic business jet program. The recipient of many awards, John Holding received an honorary doctorate from the University of Montreal in 2005 and is a Fellow of the Royal Aeronautical Society. John Peter Holding, as an engineer in the aviation industry, has contributed in an exceptional way to the advancement of aviation and aerospace in Canada and was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame on May 16, 2019.
Our third inductee is Barry Lapointe. Barry vit le jour à Vancouver en 1944. En début de carrière, cet entrepreneur né fonde la Kelowna Flightcraft, aujourd'hui CAHF Aerospace, l'une des plus importantes organisations au monde vouée à l'entretien, la réparation et la révision d'aéronefs. Elle offre également des services de formation militaire, de nolisement et de livraison commerciale. D'ailleurs, en 1974, il lance CAHF Air Charter, qui, de 1976 à 2015, livre le fret pour Purelator et Poste Canada partout au pays. À 75 ans, Barry n'a certainement pas fini de nous étonner. Join us now as we fly out west and learn all about Barry's exploits.
An aviation engineer and pilot, Barry Lapointe is the founder of CAHF Aerospace. For half a century, he has developed his company to provide charter and cargo service, aircraft maintenance, and training of Canadian military pilots. His philanthropic support of aviation and civic organizations has been instrumental in their success. He was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, on December 10, 1944, to parents Paul and Lucille. And early in life, Barry developed a passionate interest in aviation, which would be his life's calling. After attending St. Helens Elementary School in Burnaby, British Columbia, and then completing high school, Barry attended the British Columbia Institute of Technology in Burnaby, graduating in the Aircraft Maintenance and Engineering program in 1966, by which time he had earned both his private pilot license and his commercial pilot license. After 4 years of working for Harrison Airways in Vancouver, as well as with other aviation companies, in 1970, Barry Lapointe established his own company, Kelowna Flightcraft, in Kelowna, British Columbia. Kelowna Flightcraft grew rapidly, starting with aircraft maintenance, then establishing charter service for courier and freight companies. And from 1976 until 2015, Barry's company operated nearly 20 aircraft, delivering cargo daily across Canada for Purelator Courier and Canada Post, flying both propeller-driven and much larger jet aircraft bearing the CAHF logo, including Douglas DC-10s carrying freight and mail for the company. In 1995, CAHF Aerospace expanded into the airport at Hamilton, Ontario, opening a new $5 million, 50,000 square foot hangar to maintain the growing CAHF fleet supporting Purelator and Canada Post. In 2001, CAHF purchased the Convair Type Certificate, thereby ensuring ongoing support for the worldwide fleet of Convair twin-engine aircraft. CAHF also produced a stretched version of the Convair 580 and named it the Convair 5800 when it was given a 14-foot extension of the fuselage. Since 2005, the company has been providing fixed-wing and helicopter training at Southport, Manitoba for pilots of the Royal Canadian Air Force. And in 2017, CAHF Aerospace signed a contract with the Department of National Defense for support of the department's fixed-wing search and rescue program using Buffalo and Twin Otter aircraft. In 1986, Barry was part of the Odyssey 86 team of 11 people who flew a 1944 Douglas Dakota DC-3 around the world to celebrate both the 50th anniversary of the DC-3 and the World's Fair on Transportation and Communication being held in Vancouver. The aircraft visited 55 cities in 28 countries, accumulating over 280 hours of trouble-free flying over a 2-month period. The recipient of more than a dozen awards, in 1999, Barry Lapointe received an honorary Doctorate of Technology from the British Columbia Institute of Technology. In 2013, he received the British Columbia Aviation Council Lifetime Achievement Award, and in 2015, Barry was honored again by being invested as a member of the Order of British Columbia. In 2014, Barry donated $500,000 to Okanagan College as part of a $33 million expansion and renovation for the trades training facility on the Kelowna campus. And his company has donated Boeing 727 aircraft to university and college programs in British Columbia and Ontario to support aviation-related programs and training. In 2015, to better reflect the scope of its operations, Kelowna Flightcraft became CAHF Aerospace.
From big planes to big plans, Kelowna Flightcraft is painting a different picture of itself. After 45 years, the company is rebranding to CAHF Aerospace. Originally started by Barry Lapointe and Jim Rogers, this local company appears to be continuing to fly.
We've now grown from basically a two-man operation 45 years ago to about 1,000 employees across Canada. We have about 80 to 90 commercial airplanes flying, internationally and in Canada, doing training and passenger and cargo services, and revenues of about $250 million a year.
In February 2019, CAHF Aerospace and Mohawk College announced plans to build a new aerospace training hub at Hamilton International Airport, with a groundbreaking ceremony that will add 150,000 square feet and over 275 jobs to CAHF Aerospace facilities and service in maintenance, repair, and overhaul. Since earning his first license as a pilot, Barry has logged over 17,000 hours, and in 2016 added a private helicopter license to his credentials. Barry has developed CAHF Aerospace into an organization that today employs over 1,000 people with a payroll in excess of $70 million annually, and the company continues to expand.
Today, on behalf of Barry Lapointe, our owner, and Tracy Medvey, our president, I'm pleased to announce another investment here at CAHF Aerospace. We're spending about $3 million this year to add on additional hangar capacity here in Kelowna. The expanded hangar number 1, will add about 21,000 square feet of space and add one additional line of maintenance work, bringing our total to about 13 lines of concurrent work here in Kelowna. That's 75 more jobs than we have today, so we're quite excited about that.
Barry Paul Lapointe continues actively as CEO and chairman of CAHF Aerospace. He was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame at ceremonies held on May 16, 2019.
We now come to our fourth inductee of the evening, James McGregor Greg McDougall. Né It happens every year. We have fan clubs, and they up the ante all the time. Wait till we get to Greg's family. We'll see in a minute. But for now, a few words. Né à Santa Barbara, en Californie, en 1955, Greg est cofondateur et PDG de Harbour Air, situé à Richmond, en Colombie-Britannique. Son entreprise d'hydravion est la plus importante du genre au monde, desservant les villes côtières de la Colombie-Britannique et de l'État de Washington. Greg McDougall et son entreprise ont reçu plusieurs prix dans les catégories suivantes: gestion, service, éco-responsabilité et sécurité aérienne. En 1974, Greg fut nommé employeur de l'année en tourisme par l'Association de l'industrie touristique du Canada. Let's travel in time and join Greg on his epic journey.
Starting his career as a young bush pilot, then founding Harbor Air Seaplanes, through continuous expansion of the company, Greg McDougall has built the world's largest all-seaplane operation. His extensive personal support of the aviation industry and community projects has earned wide acclaim for both himself and his company. Born on December 20, 1955, in Santa Barbara, California, to Canadian parents Donald McDougall and Elizabeth McGregor, Greg spent summers with his family on British Columbia's Sunshine Coast, with early exposure there to aviation and float planes, and began flying in 1975, earning his private pilot license at the Pitt Meadows Airport near Vancouver, leading to his first job as a bush pilot in 1977 with Wolverine Air, flying aircraft on floats from Fort Simpson in the Northwest Territories. From 1978 until 1980, Greg flew for Hayek Air Limited, and then as a corporate pilot for a land development company. In 1982, Greg and another pilot, Cliff Oakley, leased an office in the Vancouver Harbor and 2 de Havilland Beaver aircraft and established Harbor Air Limited as a charter service to the resource sector and flying fishermen to remote fishing lodges in British Columbia. In 1986, Harbor Air acquired 8 beavers and 1 otter from Air BC and also acquired Air BC's Sea Island Terminal. With the Expo 86 World's Fair held in Vancouver in 1986, tourist traffic resulted in increased fishing charters, and in 1989 alone it ferried 17,000 fishing enthusiasts to lodges on the BC coasts. By then, the company was offering scheduled services from Vancouver to the Gulf Islands and points on Vancouver Island. In 1986, partner Cliff Oakley was killed in a plane crash, and that year, Greg McDougall entered into partnership with Ken Borick of Ken Borick Air Limited, based in Calgary. In 1996, the company started Vancouver to Victoria service and introduced sightseeing flights from the capital city.
My name is DJ, and I'll be your pilot today with Harbor Air. We're going to take the Beaver here up on a panoramic city scenic tour. It's our most popular tour here at Harbor Air.
Buying assets of bankrupt Transprovincial Airlines Limited, Greg's company established bases at Haida Gwaii, and by the mid-1990s, Harbor Air was the largest charter flight company in the province. Scheduled service was introduced between Vancouver and Victoria, as well as to Nanaimo. When partner Ken Borick and his daughter lost their lives in a car collision in 2002, Greg McDougall became the sole owner of Harbor Air Limited. From 2003 to 2012, the company acquired other operators, adding more beavers and otters to the fleet, increasing its aviation tourism service. In 2013, Harbor Air started a new venture called Tantalus Air, offering charter flights on a Pilatus single-engine turboprop aircraft, and began scheduled service between Pitt Meadows and Victoria in September 2014. The company now has bases in Victoria and Sechelt, as well as at Pitt Meadows, in the Gulf Islands, and at Vancouver with regular service from there. With over 12,000 hours logged as a pilot, as CEO of his company, Greg McDougall has built it to the status of the world's largest seaplane operator. The purchase of Salt Spring Air in 2015 added more Beaver aircraft to the company and service to Salt Spring Island. Nearly 50 aircraft now fly in 180 flights daily. The company employs over 450 people, including 80 pilots. Under Greg McDougall's leadership, in 2012, Harbour Air was awarded the Cumberbatch Trophy for outstanding contributions to flight safety, and Greg is recognized nationally as having one of Canada's best managed companies. In 2016, Harbour Air opened its new terminal at the Victoria Harbour Airport, and in 2018, Greg began operating floatplane service between Vancouver and Seattle with a Cessna Caravan. An avid cyclist and riding with the Harbour Air team, Greg is the founding sponsor of the BC Bike Race and an annual sponsor of major cycling tours. His company provides over 3,000 free flight passes each year to disadvantaged individuals and has been involved with Hope Air, flying critically ill patients to medical appointments. Recognized internationally as an expert on seaplane management, Greg has extended the company's scope to operations in China, with Harbour Air entering into a strategic partnership to export commuter floatplane service to China. Greg McDougall has been described as a rare mix of aviator and entrepreneur who has changed the face of aviation on Canada's west coast. Greg was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame at ceremonies held on May 16, 2019.
We now come to our final inductee of the evening, Bill Paris. Bill est né à Ottawa en 1919 et décédé en 2010. Il a consacré sa vie à l'aviation canadienne comme pilote de guerre, comme instructeur de vol à la Royal Canadian Flying Clubs Association, comme expert conseil dans l'évolution de la réglementation de l'aviation générale au pays et comme instigateur de la reprise du trophée Webster. Je m'empresse d'ajouter son rôle comme directeur fondateur de la Société du Musée national de l'aviation et l'organisation des éléments techniques de la Great London to Victoria Air Race de 1970. May we have the life and times of Bill Paris, please.
As a fighter pilot in the Royal Canadian Air Force, attached to the Royal Air Force, William Paris distinguished himself flying Spitfires in the North African Campaign. Post-war, for several decades, he was a leading figure in civilian pilot training and in management of the Royal Canadian Flying Clubs Association. Born in Toronto, Ontario, on July 23, 1919, to parents William and Caroline, William Philip Bill Paris attended school in Toronto, and in 1940, Bill signed up with the Royal Canadian Corps of Signals in the Military Reserve and attained the rank of sergeant. In 1941, he transferred to the Royal Canadian Air Force and took pilot training at No. 10 Elementary Flying Training School in Hamilton, Ontario, where he took his first flight on August 21, 1941, in a Fleet Finch airplane. This was followed by further training at No. 1 Service Flying Training School at Camp Borden, Ontario, where trainees flew Harvard and Yale aircraft, and where Bill earned his wings and graduated as a sergeant pilot in January 1942. Bill's next assignment was a posting to England for further training, where he made his first flight in a Spitfire of the Royal Air Force. In July 1942, Bill reported to 122 Squadron of the Royal Air Force at Hornchurch, Kent, and on July 26 he flew his first operational flight as a fighter pilot. Flying the Spitfire with 242 Royal Air Force Squadron, and then with 152 Squadron, Bill was shipped to Gibraltar in preparation for combat with Operation Torch, the invasion of North Africa. In November 1942, Bill began flying Spitfires equipped in Gibraltar with long-range fuel tanks. Combat action followed, with Bill damaging a Messerschmitt Me-109 flying with 152 Squadron over Tunis. On one operation, Bill shot down an enemy Stuka dive bomber, thus scoring his first victory. Regular combat flights continued for 152 Squadron, and in mid-January 1943 it was re-equipped with new aircraft. Bill was flying up to 4 operational flights per day, promoted to pilot officer, and 152 Squadron was converted to a Spitfire bomber squadron with the aircraft modified to carry 2 250-pound bombs. In May 1943, Bill reported to 144 Maintenance Unit Headquarters at Maison Blanche in Algeria to test fly rebuilt fighter aircraft for return to service in North Africa. In April 1944, Bill returned to Canada, posted to No. 13 Elementary Flying Training School at St. Eugene, Ontario, to train Navy pilots. At war's end, with victory celebrated in Toronto and across Canada, Bill was discharged from the Air Force with the rank of Flight Lieutenant. From 1946 to 1952, Bill was a part-time instructor with the Toronto Flying Club, when civilian pilot training resumed after the war, often flying Tiger Moth aircraft. In London, Ontario, from 1952 to 1955, Bill served as general manager for the London Flying Club. From 1955 to 1984, he gave 30 years of service to the Royal Canadian Flying Clubs Association, starting as secretary and ultimately as president. In 1971, Bill was head technical advisor for the London to Victoria Air Race, celebrating the centennial of British Columbia's entry into Confederation. And for his work with the race, he received the Paul Tissandier Diploma from the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale. Bill served as a founding director and later president of the National Air Museum Society when it was established in 1978. And saw the Society ultimately lead to the establishment of the Canada Aviation and Space Museum in Ottawa. In 1989, Bill was installed as a member of the Order of Canada by Governor-General Jean Sauvé, recognizing his contribution to aviation and service to the Royal Canadian Flying Clubs Association. In June 1944, Bill had married Jacqueline Cole in Toronto, and the couple had one child, Barbara, born in 1951. Following Jacqueline's death from cancer, Bill married Joan Whedon Reed in 1971, who died in 2012, predeceased by Bill, who died in Ottawa in 2010. William Philip Paris served aviation as a wartime fighter pilot, flying instructor, flying club builder, organization manager, director, and museum builder. He left a lasting imprint in Canadian aviation heritage. Bill was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame on May 16, 2019.
A few words about a very special person at the Hall that Rod Sheridan mentioned in his opening remarks. Invariably at our annual galas, we are told how wonderful are the biographical videos like the ones we have just seen. As you might suspect, a lot of work goes into their production. For many years now, the mastermind behind them has been our longtime resident historian at the Hall, Mr. John Chalmers. The work involved is enormous, with more than 100 hours researching, interviewing, and collating information, then coordinating with our partners in creating not only the videos, but also the articles for this evening's program and related material. This year's videos are the final ones for John. Yes, the time has come to take a break and pursue other interests while still keeping very close to the Hall, I'm sure, including providing guidance to our new resident historian, Jonathan Scotland, who is also in attendance here this evening. On behalf of all of us, and especially all of the members of the Hall who have been immortalized through your good work, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts and wish you every success in your future endeavors. John, I'd like you to rise and take a bow. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to congratulate you on your cooperation. We started on time. Our on-time performance is incredible. Actually, we're ahead of schedule. So that gives us a bit more time to mingle, socialize, share stories, and relive memories. We'll take a short break now. We'll be back at 9 o'clock. And remember, this is very important. The bar closes at 9. So take advantage of it. We'll see you at 9 o'clock sharp. Thank you. As you can see, our inductees have already been escorted on stage. In a few moments, I will invite them to step forward and receive the recognition, after which each will say a few words. But first, I would ask Emily Holding and immediate past Chair Tom Appleton to lead us respectively into a toast to the Queen and a toast to our members. And I would ask all of you to please rise.
To the Queen, à la Reine.
To the Queen, à la Reine.
Bonsoir, Madame, Messieurs, tout le monde. Pray charge your glasses, milords, miladies, and gentlemen, and stand as you are able for a toast to those inducted and to those who will be inducted this evening into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. Devant nos verres aux valeureux piliers qui ont peiné à bâtir l'aviation canadienne et à ceux qui contribuaient de façon remarquable au progrès de l'industrie de l'aérospatiale. To those who have led the way, blazing a trail through footless falls of air, a toast to our inducted members.
To our inducted members. Thank you very much, Emily and Tom. Thank you so much. The moment we have all been waiting for, the induction of our laureates. The presentation of their certificates and medals will be made by our special guest of honor this evening, Monsieur Laurent Baudouin. We begin with David Fairbanks, represented by Tom Appleton.
It truly is a privilege and a distinct honor for me, as one who has worked with him and was mentored by him for 9 formative years, to receive this award on behalf of David Charles Fairbanks, Distinguished Flying Cross with 2 bars. Familiarly known to all of his colleagues, friends, and family as FUBAR. David was an inspiring individual, one of those rare types who always led by example, not only in war, but in peacetime. His accomplishments over an abbreviated lifespan were legion, and he left his mark in every endeavor he undertook. Historian Jack Granestein has described the massive British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, which graduated more than 130,000 pilots and aircrew members, as a great undertaking that would unquestionably rank as the major Canadian military contribution to the Allied war effort. Upon entry into the Air Training Plan, David was quickly identified as a natural pilot, a good communicator, and a leader to whom his colleagues flocked for advice and leadership. And naturally, being the star that he showed such promise, he was selected to be an instructor for 18 months, training others, and in the meantime, honing his own fighting skills. Over time, the names and faces of our aviation pioneers slowly drift away, but their legacy continues to ensure that Canadians, as well as those who fly with Canadian air carriers in Canadian airspace or on board Canadian-built airplanes, do so with unparalleled levels of safety, security, and efficiency. And so it is with Dave Fairbanks. Was it not for the Hall, his name might have been forgotten. Now his accomplishments will live on in the hearts and minds of those young Canadians who follow in his footsteps. Fubar always said that he didn't want to be buried in the land, he wanted to be buried at sea. He explored the land and explored the sky, and now he wanted to explore the depths of the oceans. Well, Fubar, safe travels through the ocean, and you have our respect. Thank you.
Our second inductee this evening is Mr. John Holding.
I would like to thank the board for my induction into the Hall of Fame. It's only when you see the names of the past recipients, including my fellow inductees tonight, that you realize what a great honor this is. Rod, I thank you again. It's also significant that this award ceremony should take place in May of 2019 in Montreal, as it is exactly 40 years ago this month, 3rd of May actually, that 5 apprehensive and slightly bemused individuals found themselves in the immigration center at Mirabel Airport, myself, my wife, and 3 young children. We had arrived from Manchester, England, to begin a new life in Canada, with me having accepted a job with Canadair, having spent the previous 17 years in the UK working for British Aerospace on military aircraft development. Nobody gets to my position without the help and support of numerous people. In the few minutes I have, it's impossible to do that full justice. However, I will do my best, with apologies that many I will fail to mention. As I said, the first 17 years in the business in the UK, working on military aircraft development, several important aspects of this were significantly beneficial to my future career in Canada. Firstly was the engineering education that I received. At 18, I was hired by English Electric to a 5-year student apprenticeship. They financially supported me through college and university. And not only did I get a first-rate technical education, but I learned what it took to develop and produce aircraft by spending time at the plant, going through the complete development and manufacturing process. No long college breaks for me. The day college broke up, I was at the plant working. In fact, at the time in the UK, you could not become a professional engineer unless you had spent at least 18 months working on the shop floor, and I mean working. I went through the full manufacturing process, from raw material entering the shop to final delivery of the product. I found this was valuable to me throughout my career. I was also lucky to be working on some of the most technically advanced aircraft in the world, and this knowledge, understanding, and management of technology would again help me as we develop future products at Bombardier. Both the major programs that I was involved in, the Jaguar and Tornado, were multinational joint development programs. I learned the hard way about managing development programs in a collaborative manner from both a technical and cultural perspective. Again, great benefit as we develop the Bombardier development process. On a personal level, I also had the opportunity to work for a short period of time on the Concorde development. I was seconded to BAE Filton to help them out on their variable engine intake system, as this was one of my responsibilities on the Tornado. To have been able to work probably on the most iconic aircraft development program in the 20th century was fantastic. This experience was completed when I actually flew commercially on the aircraft later during my career at Bombardier. This then was the legacy of my UK work experience that I brought to Canada and Canadair. So I came to Canadair in May of 2019. A lot of you may have heard or read about the state of Canadair in the late 70s. Believe you me, it was a lot worse than you can imagine. You had to have been there to witness the sheer lack of business and technical rigor, discipline, and control. They did, however, have two things going for them that kept me there. They had a concept, the Challenger aircraft. I call it a concept because it was a long way from being a finished product. But due to its basic configuration and level of technology, I recognize it had great potential. Secondly, there were also some very good people at Canadair. It was clear if somebody could come along, put some business, manufacturing, and technical controls in place, there was a future for the company. Along came Bombardier. The rest, as you say, is history. What was achieved in a relatively short period of time by taking Bombardier to become the third largest aerospace company in the world was remarkable. This has been achieved through astute acquisitions and focused product development. This was down to the vision, drive, and entrepreneurship of one man, Laurent Baudouin. Without a doubt, the opportunity I had of working closely with Laurent over the years has been the highlight of my career. Laurent, it was a pleasure to be part of that great journey. You're also a pretty good assistant engineer. That's an in-joke. So thank you, Laurent. I also need to thank other members of the team that Laurent put together who helped and supported me over the years. It's really impossible to cover them all. It's not fair to cover them all. But I would like to identify some people who helped me a lot in the early years. Raymond Royer, who appointed me as VP of Engineering. Bob Wall, Dick Richmond, who you've just heard about, who actually appointed me to run the CAP team, the Corrective Action Team. Bob Brown, Roland Gagnon, René Basseur, Jacques Savard, Vincent Bricot, and Ken Brundle. As I said, over the 26 years I was at Bombardier, there were numerous other colleagues that I would like to recognize. I can't cover them all, but it's good to see a lot of you here today. And you know, but it's impossible to mention all of you. But it's been a pleasure working with you. The other thing important is you're only as good as a team. And I was lucky to have great people working for me across all Bombardier aerospace divisions: Montreal, Toronto, Wichita, Belfast. Again, can't mention them all. One of the highlights, however, for me, was the emergence of a new breed of engineers coming through the system, especially from Quebec, due to the aerospace options offered at École Polytechnique and McGill. And it's good to see a lot of you here tonight. And it's a great pleasure for me to see how they have developed and progressed. Rather than mention individuals and know I missed it, I'd like to everybody that's worked with me over the years at Bombardier to please stand and please give them a round of applause. So please, everybody rise who worked with me. Believe you me, along with my products, you are my pride, equal to the products. Over the years, we developed many great products together. However, there's two that I would like to mention that are very dear to my heart. The first is a regional jet, a game-changing product, changed the way the airlines operated. And also very important and very difficult when you think from a product development point of view, It's the only commercial aircraft to have ever been developed from a business aircraft. The other is the Global Express. This aircraft, to me, finally defined Bombardier as a premier business aircraft manufacturer and introduced a new way of developing aircraft. You can see a couple of examples here tonight, and they're fantastic aircraft. I think there's close to probably 900 in service. I retired from Bombardier in 2005 and embarked on the third leg of my aerospace career as a consultant. This has been very satisfying, as I've had the opportunity to put together what I had learned in the previous 40 years to help many companies and organizations. This included maintaining very strong relationships with Bombardier and helping them with their C-Series, Rob, not the A220. And the Global 7500 aircraft, which to me is absolutely fantastic aircraft. And it will form the basis for a whole set of new developments over the years. As you know, a lot of you know, this business in product development is a 24/7, 365 job and consumes a major part of your life. I have been in this business and still am it for nearly 60 years. And to me, it's not been a job, it's been a passion. And it's still going. And inevitably, this can take a toll on your family life. Without the complete support through the years of my family, especially my wife, I would not have been able to achieve what I have. So in finishing, I would like the 4 other souls that were in that Mirabel Immigration Hall on the 3rd of May 1979 to stand and get a round of applause. My wife, Cherie, and my children, Sarah, James, and Emily. Thank you.
Our third inductee, Barry Lapointe.
Wow. I mean, I've never had a medal in my life, you know. Thank you very much. I'll wear it very proudly. You know, when I got the news that I was going to be indoctrinated into this great Hall of Fame, in my wildest imaginations, I'd never thought that this would ever happen in my life. And to walk with the Eagles that have received this is absolutely a very privilege to me. And I am very honored to meet the people, Mr. Bombardier, my friend Greg, and all the others that have been successful in achieving this. It's really an honor for me. It's very hard to talk about yourself, you know, because I looked at what was presented and I thought, wow, who the hell is he? Yeah. But I have been lucky. I've had supportive people, and I've had a tremendous passion for aviation since I was 10 years old. I started building model airplanes when I was 10. I think my mom thought I was just sniffing the glue, but I was really building airplanes because I had a passion for them. I look back a bit, and I remember at about 12, I built this U-control airplane. I don't know if you people are familiar with gas model airplanes. They don't have them anymore. Everything's electric. Everything's going to electric. And I had to start it by hand, and I fly it around in circles. And I was so proud because I built this airplane. It took me about 3 or 4 months. It was beautiful. It was a profile of a P-51 Mustang. I got my first flight lesson that day. Do not start a loop close to the ground. So that indoctrinated me into the repair business. Because I had this scrap of balsa wood and engine on the ground. My dad came up to me and said, well, what the hell are you going to do now, son? I said, I don't know, Dad. I'm going to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And I did, and I flew it. And I really enjoyed that art of flying, but also the mechanics. I loved it so much that I was 16 years old when I started my flying career, and Skyways in Langley. It's very interesting because in those days, it was $250 to get your pilot's license. Boy, that's come a long ways from, of course, so has gas, right? I mean, it's another problem. But I started flying when I was 16. I scared the hell out of everybody at Langley. There was a high school at one end and a hospital at the other. I wasn't too sure where I was going to end up, but it was fun. At 18 years old, I decided I was having so much fun repairing car engines, which my young son has a passion for, to start thinking about aviation. So I talked myself into the AME course at BCIT, Wellington, with Colonel Ingus. He was the head commander at the time, and I got my AME license at 21. I compressed 4 years into 2 years because I wanted so hard to get into the industry. I look back on it now, and it was the passion continued to build. Now, there's many people that I can certainly thank for where I am today. And I'm going to mention a few. Some of you might know them, some of you won't, because we live in the West Coast, not out in the big country. But I think the first persons that I could see to develop my passion was my mom and dad. They were great entrepreneurs in Vancouver. They worked hard, they succeeded, and they accepted the risk of being an entrepreneur. And I was willing to take that risk. So when my license was still wet, I ran out to the airport, said to Jerry Haldeman, Harrison Airways, come hire me. I'm the best mechanic in the world. And he said, okay, we'll see. So I worked with Harrison for a few years, and then there was a guy named Norm Gold, Air BC. He had a float operation before Greg, and he taught me two important things. No matter how miserable and grumpy you can be, if you pay your bills on time, nobody ever complains. And for every dollar, there's 100 pennies, and if you can save 2 of those, you're going to be successful. So Norm was a big mentor for me. The other one, what was very important to me, getting my education, because here's a kid out of high school wanting to be a doctor. Can you imagine me as a doctor? Was a guy by the name of Don Steele. He was the old-style bank managers of the Royal Bank of Canada. Understand, the Royal Bank of Canada is here. They've been my bank for over 55 years. They've never let me down. And although in my wildest dreams of financing, they would always somehow come through. I remember Don one day running to him and say, Don, I got this great contract with Purelator. I need $500,000. He looked at me and said, what? I didn't $500,000. You got the bank, write the check. He said, well, let me see the contract. So I rolled out this contract, 6 months contract. Look, Don. He said, yeah, but read the fine print. What do you mean read the fine print? It's got a 7-day cancellation clause. I said, what's that mean to me? You know, it means nothing. You know, give me the money and I can get going. And he did. And it helped me start my Purelator career and develop across Canada the courier system as we know it today. Another great guy, and he's a member, was Max Ward. Here I am, 24 years old, bought my first DC-3, went up north to make my fortune, and the first thing I ran into was Max. And he said, son, I think you're going about this all wrong. I said, what do you mean, Mr. Ward? Well, the first thing you got to do is get a license. I said, really? You mean I can't hang my shingle out and start chartering? He says, no, that's going to have a big effect on me. Well, Max, how do I do this? So he mentored me, said, first thing you got to do is talk to Transport Canada. I said, well, you haven't done very well with them, you know. We had a joke about that, and then there was Bob Ingalls, which was another great aviation icon of the North. And the last person, well, there's two last persons. There's a good friend of mine who I met at Time Air. He's president of Time Air. He worked for Stubb Ross, or Stubb Ross worked for Stubb. There's a guy by the name of Richard Barton. Sorry. Everybody okay back there? Just want to make sure. Was Richard Barton. And he was a real fine gentleman. As a matter of fact, my president, Tracy Medvey, who is here tonight, worked for Richard too, and I think she will agree with me. One of the most interesting things he taught me one day when I was head-to-head with the CTA in trying to get a license and trying to convince Department of Transport that they weren't so smart was, Barry, it's better to have people think you're a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubts. And I always took that to heart because in a lot of ways it was true. And the last person that really forged my career in the business world, and aviation is a business. You know, you can have a passion and the desire and the excitement and everything else, but when the bank says you're out of money, guess what? Ask a lot of airlines out here that is a bad deal. It was a guy by the name of Ike Barber, and in British Columbia, Ike Barber is synonymous with education, business, and I was so fortunate because I used to fly him around in an old Cessna 421 that I had the opportunity to have him sit as a co-pilot with me because he loved to learn about flying, and I loved to learn about business, and we had a great relationship. So those are some people, and there's millions of others I could talk about. But one of the reasons I'm here today is because it was people to forge me into being what I did appear to be on TV, or whatever that is there. So back, and the other thing I forgot, go back to Richard. Richard, one day I was bitching and moaning about the re-regulation of air regulations back in '86. The world was changing. CP was fighting with Air Canada was fighting with PWA, Transair, I mean, there was all the old guys. And he was the one to say, Barry, quit complaining, but why don't you do something about it? Join the Airline Transport Association of Canada, become a member, get on the board, and maybe one day you might be chairman. And as it turned out, it happened exactly like that. And I really now got a real insight of airlines and how they work and the continuous problems that we have with the wisdom of Transport Canada. You know, I know I'd get a laugh out of that. I hope there's nobody here. It reminds me right now, Jerry Swartz used to own Pure Later Courier, which I'm still a big shareholder of, and it's the old story that, you know, I think Jerry finally wants to be a millionaire because he's starting with his billions. So we'll see what happens after that. So, anyways, I won't bore you with the rest of my career. It has its ups and downs. As we say, it's hours and hours of sheer boredom marked by seconds of sheer terror. And that's what aviation is all about. When I was with the BC Aviation Council, I used to have a saying, God, I love aviation. If anybody's been and heard me speak at BC Aviation Council, I had pins made. God, I love aviation. But it wasn't meant to be that way. It first meant to be that God, I love aviation. Shit. But tonight, I can say, God, I really do love aviation, and I certainly appreciate being indoctrinated in the Hall of Fame. Thank you very much. So in concluding, I got another round, okay? I want to thank my family, my great friends, the people that have come here to support me, my company, my executives, my people. You know, without them, one man cannot achieve everything he wants to do, and it's the support of my people that have made me look good today. And to them, I want to say thank you. I appreciate that. In second conclusion, get the hook and get them off the stage, right? Next thing you know, a couple of things. I was really honored by coming in here tonight with the Air Cadets of Canada. We have I don't know, a squadron or whatever they call themselves in Penticton. I've supported them. I've taken them for airplane rides. I've opened my shop up to them. Because this is where the future is. It isn't with old guys like me now. It's with the young kids that march down that aisle, proud as hell wearing a uniform, and proud as hell at carrying the flag. And we should never forget that. And I was thinking, because I think as you saw on TV, we run Allied Wings at Portage. We train all the primary military pilots coming into the armed forces, the primary training, and we work with Bombardier in the older days with that, and now with CAE. And it's just a continual expansion of what's everything good for Canada. We got to give them the best training, the best equipment, the best simulators, and the best airplanes. And that, we have to convince our government that that's the role we have to take. So that's our goal. That's my goal now, is to see the young people get where they want to go. The last thing, are you guys getting tired of this? The last thing is, I was so taken by Mr. D.C. Fairbanks. And I was sort of looking at the photo ops of him when he was flying his Tempest. Well, as it happens, one day crawling in a barn in New Zealand, guess what I found under the wraps of canvas? Yes, I found a Tempest in 1,000 pieces. And we currently at Kelowna are putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. And believe me, we're making every piece. But I just want to say to the families and to the friends of Lieutenant Fairbanks, we hope to have this airplane flying. It'll be the only flying Tempest in the world. There's only 8 left in the world, and they're all in museums all over the world. But we hope to have this flying on our 50th anniversary of CAHF Aerospace, which to me is a real legacy in itself. But I'm going to dedicate this airplane to Mr. Fairbanks, Lieutenant Flight Fairbanks, and make sure his name is on the side and the achievements he's done. So on a final conclusion, I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. Thank you very much for the indoctrination, and I will look forward to continuing to work with the Hall of Fame. Thank you very much.
Okay, our fourth inductee this evening, Greg McDougall.
So, hard act to follow, Barry. For somebody who normally tries to avoid the spotlight, I have to admit this is a pretty cool honor. I'm truly humbled and amazed to think that my name would be added to a list of incredible achievers in Canadian aviation history. As a side note, because I feel a need to sort of establish my Canadian credentials here after all the talk about being born in Santa Barbara, California, my Canadian heritage actually runs pretty deep. My great-grandfather was a lieutenant of Manitoba, governor of Manitoba, and was inducted into the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. So that's kind of interesting. My mother, who passed away at 92 last year, was very proud of her grandfather and would be ecstatic about this turn of events, for sure. All this is made even more cool by the fact that I'm being recognized along with my longtime friend and mentor, Barry Lapointe, a true Canadian icon in aviation. Congratulations to Barry and my fellow inductees. Deep gratitude also to the Hall, its directors, and to my sponsorship, in particular Sandra Stoddard Hansen, who's here with us tonight. Thank you, Sandra. I genuinely feel that I'm accepting this honor on behalf of a group of very talented and dedicated people, because without them, I certainly wouldn't be here. A large contingent of them are sitting right over there, the amazing team of management and co-workers at Harbour Air. Also, also here tonight is my longtime, or maybe long-suffering, business partner, advisor, and trusted friend, Brent Davies. Thanks, Brent. The adventure continues. Joanne Yan, also here, a trusted friend, board member, and a key reason for the success of our Chinese and Canadian partnership. Thanks, Joanne. Making the journey tonight as well from the West Coast is a very special group of friends that I've counted on for advice over many years. My YPO Forum group, Michael Fugman, Randy Barch, Byron Bolton, Craig Diamond. I'm truly grateful and honored that you guys are here. And then there's, of course, my family. I've been incredibly blessed by the love, support, advice, and friendship that I've received over 40 years from my amazing wife, Ingrid. All those wedding vows have been lived up to and then some. I love you. My daughter Steph, a very accomplished pilot in both helis and fixed wing, she started flying in my lap at the age of 2, along with her husband Bert, also a skilled pilot, and used to work for organizations run by Barry. Have taken on key leadership roles at Harbour Air. I love you guys, and I'm very proud of you. So this might sound a bit strange. I'm not going to go back into the past too far. I'm going to try and go to the future here. This prestigious honor is probably partially premature. The reason being that the Harbour Air team, along with our technology partners, a company called MagniX from Seattle, are taking on a bit of a moonshot. We intend to make aviation history by being the first commercial airline in the world to use an all-electric powered aircraft on scheduled service. Yes, I know, a lofty goal, but totally achievable. By taking advantage of our unique route structure of short stage-length flights and single-engine, low-energy consumption aircraft, we're able to utilize new but existing electric motor and battery technology from MagniX to retrofit our trusty and very definitely not new de Havilland Beaver. I feel like I should be asking permission from Russ Bannock to hang an electric motor on his beloved Beaver. We've begun actually retrofitting this aircraft, and the work on the prototype is well underway, and we hope to make the first test flights within 6 months. Actually, let me rephrase that. I hope to make the first flight within 6 months, hopefully not Howard Hughes style. On certification of this retrofit kit will be easily adaptable to our larger single otter in the future, allowing for greater load capacity and range. The marriage of the old and new technology will provide a pathway to a more rapid transition to electric flight, and being a seaplane will allow easier access to charging infrastructure as well as greater safety during the experimental stage. We believe that the amount of money and brain power currently being poured into the evolution of battery technology will make this conversion not only beneficial from an economic point of view in the near future, but also allow us to achieve our environmental goals, with a mitigation of noise and elimination of carbon impacts. Aviation is responsible for around 12% of transportation-related CO2 emissions, and we're pretty shocked to learn that just the emissions from our current fleet is the equivalent of 25,000 cars per year. At Harbour Air, we're proud to say that we are one of the only carbon-neutral airlines in the world, utilizing mandatory carbon offsets built into the fare structure. Reducing our carbon footprint to zero is a major goal, along with those noise impacts of our major destinations, which over the years have changed from predominantly working harbors to residential communities. We're proud and excited to continue the long-standing legacy of Canadian innovation in aviation. I believe that the next 10 years of technology evolution and innovation are going to be truly mind-blowing and incredibly exciting. However, my view of it is disrupt or prepare to be disrupted, especially in transportation sectors. So in closing, in actual closing, I was asked by an interviewer the other day if I had any advice for young entrepreneurs. Once it dawned on me that I wasn't one anymore, I said, make sure you're passionate about what you're doing, surround yourself with awesome people, share that passion, and then, especially with a team like mine, get the hell out of the way. Thank you. Have a great night.
Our final inductee this evening, Bill Paris, represented by his nephew, Bill Paris.
To the Chairman and the Board of Directors of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame, today's inductees, my induction assistant and wife, Jan, my family, guests and friends and acquaintances of Uncle Bill's who gave us guidance and support with the nomination process, I say a sincere thank you. Our family is very pleased and proud to accept the induction of William Philip Paris into Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. My uncle passed in June 2010 in his 91st year, and I am pleased to represent him here today. Uncle Bill passed having received the Order of Canada in 1989 for his contributions to aviation. And with the blessing from his wife, Joan, who before her passing in May of 2012, it was decided that there was a need to apply for his induction into the Aviation Hall of Fame as a final tribute to his whole life of aviation, of assisting aviation in Canada. I must admit, we were not successful in our first try. But over the years, with more supporting documents, we were able to complete the process. Then on October 15th, my wife Jan got the call. Jan brought the phone to me and said, "You're going to want to take this." The congratulatory call made me speechless for a moment, and I must admit, brought tears to my eyes. My main thought that I was sorry that my Uncle Bill was not here to take this call personally. I was lucky to have spent some quality time flying with my Uncle Bill as a boy, usually to meetings in different flying clubs around the province. One occasion, shortly before my 11th birthday, we were traveling west from Toronto to the London Flying Club when I was watching the cars in the 401 pass us. And I said, "Uncle Bill, how come those cars are passing us down there?" And that's when he gave me a lesson on the relevancy between airspeed, ground speed, and moving air masses. In my teens, my uncle encouraged me to join the Peterborough Flying Club, and in 1976, I obtained my private pilot's license. Shortly after that, I partnered with a friend and purchased a PA-11 fabric aircraft that you had to stand and swing the prop to start it. In the 80s, my wife Jen and I purchased a Cessna 185 on floats and managed to accumulate 800 hours on that aircraft. There is no doubt that my love for flying was bestowed upon me by my Uncle Bill. Uncle Bill enjoyed life, he enjoyed his career, and he enjoyed being able to contribute to aviation in Canada. Thanks, Uncle Bill. Your efforts did not go unnoticed. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in showing our inductees how much we appreciate their extraordinary accomplishments and their remarkable contributions to the development and success of aviation in Canada. Mesdames et messieurs, ladies and gentlemen, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker this evening, Madame Hélène Gagnon. Notre conférencière invitée est diplômée en droit de l'Université McGill et détient une maîtrise de la London School of Economics. Après quelques années comme avocate en droit de l'environnement chez Fasken, elle a bifurqué vers le monde des affaires publiques. Elle a travaillé dans le domaine minier chez Noranda et ensuite dans le domaine des transports pour Bombardier Transport et Bombardier Aéronautique. Aujourd'hui, elle est vice-présidente Affaires publiques et communications mondiales chez CAE. Early in her career, she was identified as one of Canada's top 100 most powerful women by the Women Executive Network. She has garnered more than 60 scholarships, awards, distinctions, and excellent prizes. She has always been very active in the community. She has been involved in more than 50 organizations, including government advisory boards, nonprofit and charity organizations, business associations, and was appointed to more than 25 boards of directors, including the Board of Hydro-Quebec and the Board of the Montreal Airports. She has chaired the Aerospace Industry Association of Canada's Board of Directors, as well as Aéro Montréal's board. Please join me in welcoming Madame Hélène Gagnon.
Merci, Denis, pour cette belle introduction, et puis mes félicitations vraiment chaleureuses à nos 5 intronisés ce soir au Panthéon de l'aviation canadienne. When I was asked by Frank and Rod to give a speech tonight, I accepted. I felt honored and privileged. But after, I realized that last year's speech was given by an astronaut, and he showed his walk in space on video. Wow! Yikes. I should have known that before accepting. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a pilot. I'm not an astronaut. So tonight, I'm not going to take you out in space, but I'm going to try to take you out of the box. Preparing for tonight, I asked my son, Victor. He's now 20 years old, so I asked for his ideas. And I said, Victor, I've been asked by the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame to give a speech, and I explained the mission. I said, the mission of the Hall of Fame is to keep our aviation heroes, leaders, and innovators in the hearts and minds of Canadians. So I asked him, what would it take for you to want to know more about our leaders and heroes in the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame? And he started by reminding me, Mom, we were 150,000 to walk in the streets of Montreal on March 15 to raise awareness about the importance to take action to fight climate change. Fundamentally, that is what we care about. And this is not about my generation. It's about everybody. We're all on the same planet. We all face the same challenge. So I would want to know, what is your industry and your leaders doing to protect our environment, to reduce our carbon footprint? Because we associate ourselves with leaders and innovators who share our value of environmental protection. My son is right. Recently, we have started to see news articles and activists encourage people to stop traveling by plane because of the carbon footprint. That's obviously not in the interest of our industry. Before I joined the aerospace industry, I personally wondered about aviation's environmental commitment. As you heard, I was an environmental lawyer early in my career, and I was coming from the rail and public transit industry. I actually decided to jump into aerospace with the firm intention to have an impact on its environmental commitment. I actually realized that the aviation industry was already doing quite a lot to become more environmentally friendly. Aircraft in service today are over 80% more fuel efficient than the first jets in the 1960s. Yes, aviation is responsible for 2% of worldwide CO2 emissions. But our industry has taken a commitment to reduce CO2 emissions by 50% by year 2050 relative to 2005. And it was the first industry to make such a bold commitment 10 years ago. And it was under Bombardier's leadership, a Canadian leader, that business aircraft manufacturers decided to join that commitment to do their share as well to reduce the carbon emission. That's something I personally spearheaded at the time. It was important to me. And there is a plan to make that 50% carbon reduction happen. Biofuels have now been certified and have been used by various airlines. They've been shown to reduce the carbon footprint of aviation fuel by up to 80% over their full life cycle. So now it's only a question of price and availability before biofuels can actually reduce CO2 emissions of all aircraft in service. We've seen more environmentally friendly aircraft enter into service in the last 10 years. Of course, we're thinking about the Airbus A220, formerly known as the C Series, with its 20% better fuel burn and reduced noise footprint. It was designed and it's being assembled right here in Montreal. Recent aircraft use less than 3 liters of jet fuel per 100 passenger kilometer. That's actually matching the efficiency of the most modern compact car while traveling much further, much faster. And about 80% of aviation's CO2 emissions are emitted from flights over 1,500 kilometers, for which there is no practical alternative mode of transportation. Airports are getting their carbon accreditation from Airports Council International, and Montreal Trudeau was the first Canadian airport to be certified. Airlines are saving fuel through more efficient procedures and weight reduction. Some airlines taxi to the runway on 1 engine only, instead of using 2. And of course, I have to mention that type rating and training pilots only on flight simulators, like what CAE is doing, is avoiding millions of tons of CO2 emissions every year. And let's not forget space-based technologies, because they help us better understand our planet, its water cycles, the air quality. So I think that everyone in the Canadian industry is actually working on aircraft parts or offering services for aircraft that are becoming greener every year. You see, our industry is actually doing a lot to reduce its carbon footprint. So now, our challenge is to make this public knowledge and to make sure that each company in this room starts talking about its environmental commitment. Everyone is doing something about it. So tell your kids, tell your families, tell your neighbors, because we need to be proactive to counter that movement, asking people to stop traveling by plane because of our carbon footprint. We can actually be very proud of what our industry is doing to reduce CO2 emissions. And I think all our inducted leaders tonight had something to do with it as well. The Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame could highlight the environmental contribution of all new inducted leaders, because they all contribute. And that is an element that will make our leaders and innovators closer to the hearts and minds of Canadians. So back to that day, discussing my speech with my son, Victor, he continued, "Mom, people love leaders they feel represented by, not only by their values, but by what they look like. They have to be representative of our society." I couldn't help but think about the numbers. Today, only 10 out of the 235 leaders in the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame are women. That's about 4%. Most of them are pilots, others are engineers, and we have an astronaut. We have to face it. In our industry in general, gender balance is a challenge. We sometimes have 20% of women in our companies in engineering and technical functions. Sometimes it's more around 15%, so not many rise to the top. The number one challenge we all face today is to make sure we attract talent to our industry, to our companies. We need to attract the new generation. According to Air Montreal's data, we will require to fill 37,000 jobs in Quebec aerospace alone by 2028. So if we don't make efforts to hire more women in our industry, we're just not tapping into the full talent pool. Diversity does not happen by accident. It actually requires efforts. At CAE, the company I work for, we've launched a diversity and inclusion initiative over the last year. Our CEO, Marc Parent, and incidentally, a lot of you know Marc. He would have loved to be here tonight and to congratulate our 5 inducted leaders, but we're actually issuing our year-end results tomorrow morning, so he had to stay with our board of directors. But Marc Parent, our CEO, has said many times that diversity is the right thing to do, and that the last thing he would want as a father is for his son to have more opportunities than his 2 daughters would have. So we put together a diversity council. We trained on management on unconscious bias. We trained our employees on what diversity and inclusion really means. We set targets. We identified up-and-coming women in our succession plans. We forced some robust development plans to help them progress. And within only 1 year, we made the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index along with 230 companies around the world. And we went from 1 vice president, myself on the executive committee 4 years ago, to 2, and now 3 out of 10. We have a few very visible and very senior women in Canadian aerospace, and you see them on the screen. Of course, we have Tracy Medvey, she's here, Maria de la Posta, Sonia Branco, yes, definitely, Suzanne Benoit, Lucie Guillemette, Annick Guerrard. We have some fantastic women in our industry, but we should have so much more. I'm pretty sure you're aware, and this is not me saying this is known data, so you should know this by now. A man will raise his hand for a promotion when he has about 60% of what is required. A woman will never consider it unless she has the full 100%. So women need a little encouragement. So these things do not happen by accident. Some leaders have to push a little harder to make sure that women have a chance to contribute in more senior positions. In my career, I benefited from that nudge. My peers at AIAC, the Aerospace Industry Association of Canada, identified me to be the first female chair of the board. They were all men, and these men lifted me up, and some of them are in the room tonight. A few years before that, I actually had declined the first position of vice president that was offered to me when I was 36 years old. I felt I was not ready. Thankfully, some sponsors and mentors said, "Are you crazy? You're more than ready," and so I finally accepted. In the industry I know most right now, the pilot industry, less than 5% of pilots are women. So we're not in the 15-20% range for that category. It's extremely low. Why? At CAE, we decided to research the question because we really felt we had something to do with that. So we interviewed hundreds of female pilots and of teenagers, and we got 2 insights. The first insight we gained was that all female pilots we spoke to had been exposed to aviation by someone they know when they were really young, as a kid or a teenager, all of them. And the second insight we got was that teenagers said they don't recognize themselves in the industry. They don't see enough role models paving the way for them. So we decided to act on that. We created the Women in Flight Scholarship to encourage 5 women to become pilots every year and to have some more role models to encourage women to enter our industry. We're going to pay the full tuition for these women, so that's $1 million per year investment by CAE. In their video application, these young women told us things like this. Listen to this, quote, in the car, and we're not in the 1950s, this is 2019. In the career office at school, when I told the career officer I wanted to be a pilot, he laughed. And he said, "How could you want to be a pilot? You're a woman." Shocking. Second quote, being a pilot was something I've always dreamed of, but didn't realize I could actually do. Quote, I follow some female pilots on social media, and it drives me. It's making me think, that could be me someday. Another quote, I want to be that woman pilot in that male-dominated environment. So it's clear that young women still feel there are barriers to their entry in our industry, but you can feel the energy and the determination. Since we launched the scholarship, we've already seen an increase in the application of women in our pilot academies worldwide. So we'll announce the first winners in the first few weeks, but already we're having an impact. With the 300,000 new pilots we all require in the next 10 years, we need to make sure we tap in the full talent pool. And it's not just about gender diversity, it's also about the younger generation as well. And here I'm going to quote Laurent Baudouin, who's right here actually, behind me, because I heard him say in the past, age is not important. If someone is really good and has potential, give him or her lots of responsibility early in their career. They will surprise you. Mettez les jeunes sur la glace rapidement, ils vont vous surprendre. We need more of that. He reminded me he was 28 when he was president of Bombardier the first time. So the Canadian Aviation Hall of Fame could raise the profile of the 10 inducted women and perhaps think of creating a category for emerging leaders to increase the spotlight on more women and young leaders from our industry, to encourage a bit more gender balance over time and encourage the younger generation to join our fantastic industry. Flying was an impossible dream just over a century ago. Thanks to heroes like our 5 inductees tonight, the dream is now a reality. You help build the fascination around aviation and make the dream live on in Canada. But we all have a role to play for this dream to become a reality for even more people. We need to inspire the next generation of heroes and innovators. So talk about the great things we do to reduce aviation's environmental footprint. Show that you care, because a lot of people do care about the environment, and I think our industry cares about the environment a lot. Imagine if our industry was leading the way on environment. Perhaps we could see headlines like this in 10 years in Canada. What else could we do to inspire more people? Well, you could launch a diversity and inclusion initiative in your company, but also you could expose your daughters, your granddaughters, your nieces to aviation. Share with them your stories. Share your passion. Bring them into the cockpit. It could make a huge difference. Invite more women into the discussion. Spot talent in people who don't look like you, don't think like you all the time, and give them a little push, because they might need a little help believing in themselves. Imagine if our industry was leading the way in diversity and inclusion. Perhaps we could see headlines like this in Canada in just 10 years. Diversity is a fact, but inclusion is a choice. So on that note, I want to thank you for making the choice of including me tonight in that fabulous gala, and congratulations again to our 5 inductees. Thank you.
And now, to thank you on behalf of the Hall and the audience, I welcome back to the stage our chairman, Rod Sheridan.
When Frank and I first asked Helene to speak tonight, she was a little nervous, as she said, because she didn't have a picture standing on the end of the Canadarm, and she doesn't have a picture crawling out of the cockpit of an F-18. But she, I think you'll agree, brought a very relevant topic for us to think about. Very timely, too, because we have a board meeting tomorrow. So I liked a couple of your ideas. So they're going to go into the board meeting. So, Helene, thank you very much, and truly inspirational talk. And I think you may have changed our what we want for speakers from now on. So thank you very much.
And I hope you all agree that the 2019 Induction Gala and Ceremony has been a memorable moment in time. If you'd like to relive these wonderful moments, check our website over the coming weeks or months, as a video on the entire gala will be posted for your enjoyment. Of course, such a magnificent event would not have been made possible without the generous support of our sponsors and partners. A big thank you as well to all those companies and organizations whose names and logos you have seen this evening and in the program. I would like to, of course, thank in particular our venue sponsor, Bombardier Business Aircraft. Merci aussi à ceux et celles qui ont assuré la traduction française de tous les textes destinés au programme de la soirée et aux autres publications du Panthéon. Also working behind the scenes, and whose efforts over the past months, this event could not have been the success that it is, the hardworking Operations Committee. And let's not forget Rick Riddell, the gala's official photographer, and you'll see him again at the end. And most of all, thank you for having been such a great audience. And yes, you can applaud yourselves. Before we go, let's indulge again. Let's indulge really in congratulating our inductees today.